think that's fair to say. And so he graciously agreed to give us a presentation. Bob worked with him on. Bob gets a gold star for this month, just this month.
Yeah, just this one attaboy wakes up. No, one darn it wakes up.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, okay, with that, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and I really have to say to all of you, thanks for showing up. Such a beautiful day as we have today. I know most people would be outside instead enjoying the spring weather. But let's see if I can help you understand a little bit more on DMR. What is my interest? I heard all of yours. I'm not that technical so that I build things. I am more of a traveler. I go and visit the Hong Kong Electronics Show, which is really a toy store for us electronic guys. Bigger than anything you have seen in the world when it comes to electronics. And because I go there and I find things, I bring things back, and then I find potential connections. So I know one thing that a lot of people would like when it comes to DMR radios, I'm going to explain what it is a both VHF, UHF DMR radio. And the latest thing is this. April jokes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is that in honor of the day?
So what I want to do is go through, if I can get this to work here. Is DMR radio. DMR is digital mobile radio, and it's really originating from Europe. And the reason that it's become a world standard is really there is not a big license fee for using it, building it, making it. Some of the other systems, enormous amount of money in order to build a radio. It uses a 2-slot time division multiplied access system. So for each frequency that you have on a radio, you have 2 simultaneous digital channels at a bandwidth of 12.5 kilohertz. So as the picture shows at the bottom with the repeater, during a time slot here, one of the channels are using the frequency. During next time slot, the other channel is using the frequency. So because it's digital, in the radio, it gets packaged together so that all the black pieces actually sounds like a solid voice coming across. The bandwidth, as I mentioned, is 12.5 kilohertz, 2 time slots, and they're called time slot 1 and time slot 2. You find the abbreviation TS1 and TS2 all over the place. Time slot 1 uses around 30 milliseconds, and then it lets the other channel use the next 30 milliseconds, etc. So that when I key up a radio here, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can hear on the other radios that yes, there's a delay, but there's a perfectly clear sound coming out. I said 30 milliseconds. That's because there are some check things at the end, which I'm not going to go into. So one repeater can handle 2 channels at the same time. And right there, you have a fantastic feature and opportunity. The radio itself today only handles 1 channel at a time. You can scan through a digital feature multiple channels, but you can only talk on one. There was a question.
You talk about two channels, you mean two conversations in one channel?
Two conversations on one frequency. Thanks for clarifying that. Then we have something called a talk group. The abbreviation TG is something you're also going to find quite often for talk groups. So between time slots and talk groups, the digital system now allows you to start picking what are you actually going to transmit. There is a talk group called Worldwide. It is normally talk group number 1. And if you set your radio to that and key up your transmitter, it actually, because of the way the repeaters are hooked together worldwide, it opens up all repeaters worldwide when you start talking. So cool, because with this little handheld, I have actually talked to friends in Sweden, a lot of people from the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, etc. So you can have a lot of fun with a very small investment of around $100. Yes?
You want me to keep interrupting you, or can it wait till the end?
Say that again?
I have a question, but I'm...
Yeah, I would like questions as I go.
In the middle of your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. When you do that, you're tying up the worldwide net, if you will.
That's correct.
Of repeaters. It seems to me to be being a hog, I guess, is the way I put it.
That is correct.
And so nobody else can get in there and use those.
That is correct, on that one of the two channels. That's why, excellent questions. That's why if I go down, whoops, wrong button. If I go down to US talk group instead, now I only key up all US repeaters. If I go to local talk groups, there's a few different selections. I can, for example, only key up the one repeater I'm using, or I can key up all the Twin Cities repeaters, depending on which local I select. And then there are some tactical talk groups. So yes, you make a selection when you decide which channel, I call it channel or a talk group you want to use. If you want to key up just the local, or if you're going to want to go worldwide. If you go worldwide, within the DMR community, there is an understanding that you do not sit on worldwide and chat for a typical shortwave 20 minutes or something, because yes, you are tying up that repeater for everybody else. Typically what you do, and what I've done when I chit-chat to people in England or in Sweden, as you saw, my name didn't look American. I'm an immigrant. I did come from Sweden. Yes, I'm legal. There's no risk that somebody will pick me up here.
Those aren't necessarily...
What?
Those aren't necessarily the same thing.
No, yes. I'm a U.S. citizen, let's put it that way.
Maybe you still come and get me.
Yeah. Good point. So, worldwide is kind of a place where you make the first connection. And then the way the system works is that you can then choose a tactical or some other channel where just your repeater and the repeater in Scotland communicates over the internet, so that you don't tie up the whole world. Yes?
Is there a way to override that in case, I was thinking in case of an emergency, the terrorists would set off a bomb and then tie up the worldwide repeaters with that worldwide talk group, so that it would try to, in effect, shut down or block communications that were legitimate communications.
Good question. I don't have an answer for it.
And sorry for don't mean to be.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's a valid question.
You all have a time slot you can use.
Yeah.
But one follow-up question, the thing that you were talking about, the use of worldwide, sounds like the calling channel on VHF, like Marine VHF that I used to use. Where you call on channel 16 or in other cases, and even CB would have a calling channel and then you switch to a separate channel for your
Right.
regular communication.
Typically how it works. Towards the later part of the presentation, I will actually share with you that a certain time, if it is Sunday evening or something, there is a worldwide net where there's a leader and worldwide people are calling in and just saying hi. But there was a question here.
Yeah, you'll probably get to this, but it sounds like there's an RF connection to a local repeater type thing, and then it's internet after that?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Yes, I'm getting it.
Okay, I'm jumping, I know, I'm sorry.
So talk group details. I did mention that we have a time slot 1 and a time slot 2 on the same frequency. Worldwide is called talk group number 1. North America is talk group number 3. Worldwide English language is 13. And the Minnesota DMR is 1127. So you can see how as the number grows, it becomes more local. If we look at time slot 2, that's typically local, Minnesota State, Midwest, etc. And the numbering here keeps going quite extensively, and there are internet sites that explains all of these. This is from a website. It again shows you how a repeater is structured. Some channels are always on, some others are push to talk. So just as an example, push to talk, if you want to listen to worldwide English on time slot 1, number 13, it's yellow, which means if I happen to have that on this particular channel, I'm not going to hear anything, because the repeater isn't broadcasting that. So what you need to do there is to wake the repeater up, so to speak. You need to do a short click. So the repeater recognizes you are on number 13. You want that to be open for you to listen. So that's how you, where it says push to talk, start up the yellow ones. The green ones, North America, etc., are always on. So if you turn into those, that means you will hear whatever traffic is going on. There is a time limit. So if you want to, again, listen to worldwide English, you key it on. Depending on the repeater, etc., there's typically a 10-minute, thereabouts, time limit. So after 10 minutes, if there's no traffic, if nothing happens, it goes silent again. Did it answer the question?
So I think that kind of addresses John's concern there. Like, if you key up the worldwide, it doesn't necessarily tie up all the repeaters, only repeaters that someone's used worldwide on recently or asked for worldwide.
Worldwide.
If they're in this
Yes.
mode, yeah.
Yes. So they will transmit to you, if you key up worldwide 1, it will transmit to you whatever traffic is going on for the next 10 minutes, and then revert back to the green ones that are normally all on.
But if someone camps on it and just talking and try and tie it up, everyone else, if they just ignore it for 10 minutes, they're
Yes.
basically it'll stop tying up the repeater.
Yes. Okay? So this is important, because if you get a radio and you think you can listen to worldwide by just sitting there listening, you're going to hear nothing. You have to wake it up.
So maybe you're going to address this. It seems like DMR has been very hot the last few years. Is it really growing?
I'll come to that.
Okay, great.
Yes?
Don't you just hear constant kerchunks all over the world then, as people are tuning up and starting their activations and everything? I mean, does it sound like there'd be an enormous amount of noise all the time around the world?
Not really,
Okay.
because there is a feature which I tried to use, because I did reach a repeater with this radio. There is a channel called Parrot.
Okay.
So if I nope, didn't get through. KD0 PNQ testing 1, 2, 3. You're supposed to hear yourself back.
Okay.
And KD0 PNQ testing.
Where's the nearest repeater from here?
The one that I'm talking to is Medina.
Okay.
Because it's digital, does your radio kind of know that you were reached the local repeater? Is there a
Yes.
negotiation at that level too?
Because if you look at it here,
Okay.
that picture
Because if
told
you use
you
the
that
soft time to
you're
say,
actually
yep,
talking to
the repeater did hear me before you
Yes.
even tried to. Okay.
Yes. If I don't open up the repeater, I get a little bong,
Okay.
plus it shows there that
Okay.
it's not coming through.
Okay.
This other radio and a few on the table, I have on a local channel. So that's why I don't have to really do the KD0 PNQ every time, because it's just basically going from here to there. This is hard to see, but what I'm giving you as a handout towards the end is a reference with web pages of all the material that I'm showing you. And this page shows regional talk groups, language-based talk groups, other talk groups, states, etc. Time slot 2 talk groups, statewide talk groups, country-based talk groups. So again, there's information that tells you, if I really want to try to find somebody in Italy, there's several Italian talk groups, and I can program those in and, again, do my CQ that way. In Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, we have whatever the number here is, repeaters. And as you can see, they have 2 different logos. Last year, they all used to belong to the same base system. And when I say base system, that means that the repeater, as I mentioned, is tied into the internet. That connection is pretty unique. Those people that have repeaters tie them into the internet. The blue repeaters here are actually tied in, I believe, in Atlanta. So they go via the internet down to Atlanta. That's where they get connected together. Because the Atlanta person that handles that has repeaters or handles repeaters from all over the country, it became a little bit of choke point. So John and I and others that are working emergency management, a little bit of the community support, we realized that that's not good enough. Back to the earlier question, that if you need a repeater, the tie-in, we need to be able to manage here locally. So one of the amateurs actually bought and brought together, so the repeaters that has the state, like Burnsville, St. Cloud, Faribault, Medina, and Rochester, are part of the local repeater tied together and part of the emergency management system, that if we do have a major catastrophe, we can disconnect us from the world and basically communicate locally here. So if you are using the airport and need to talk to St. Cloud, That's not a problem. Because again, if this is on the airport and one of those on St. Cloud, that just means that this one goes down to Atlanta. From Atlanta, comes up to the local connection point, and then back to the other radio. So I'm trying to explain why there is two systems here. Any questions on that? On a specific website, you have a Google map. And on that map, it shows where all the repeaters are located. And if you click on the location, you will get the call sign of the owner, you will get the frequency of the repeater, the offset plus 5 megahertz, color code 1. Color code. You that are familiar with the analog radio, you know that you can program in a digital tone to open up the repeater. On the DMR network, we call those tones, because they're not tones anymore, color codes. But it works the same way. So the color code is what actually opens up the repeaters. If that's misadjusted, you can transmit all you want, you won't open up the repeater. Some of the standard talk groups on that repeater, so you get kind of the highlights of if you want to travel to Florida and find the repeaters down there. Again, look at the map, click on it, and you will see the frequencies. This is a map of what I tried to explain earlier. Some of the repeaters go to a local connection point. Many of the others go to Atlanta and the rest of the world, etc. So just how things tie together on the internet. I had a question earlier about what about DMR and the usage? Yes, you go start and look at 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 2016 in January. It's going, it's continuing this way. There was, at the end of last year, 30,000 DMR users. 95% of them are on UHF, 440. The East Coast of the U.S. are using VHF. And that has to do with the frequency allocation. They don't have enough UHF channels available. There are 47 countries that are part of the DMR system. There are over 2,000 repeaters, and as I said, more than 30,000 users today. And it is skyrocketing.
So do you know, or does someone else know how it compares to like D-Star, for example, in terms of usage and not growth so much?
This is what's coming.
Yeah, okay.
Significantly what's coming.
Okay.
So if any of you are thinking about eventually someday getting a DMR radio, the very first thing you have to do, even before you get the radio, is to sign up on a DMR-mark.net website and register to get your digital code for the radio. What that means is each radio has a, in my case, 312-7095 number that is programmed into this. So if I transmit, and if you look at this radio, it actually shows my 312 number. This radio is, in other words, coded so that when I transmit, everybody that hears me knows who I am. And this is the first thing you need to do. Get your registration. In my case, I have 2 of them. But as you see here, I have tons of radios. I can have the same number in all my radios, but if I'm lending out the radio, I really want to have two different numbers. One is enough for multiple radios, because it's typically you using it, and you're not using two at the same time.
Is that a technical limitation on actually being able to use them with the same ID at the same time, or is it more of a, if someone tries to call you back or something,
It's
tied in?
more of knowing who is using the
Okay.
radio. There have been situations where I have seen my registration used by somebody else, and obviously I call him back and says, hey guy, get on the website and get your own. So you can borrow. People are doing that, not recommended. The second thing you need once you get a radio is the software, two pieces of software. The software that you put on your computer that allows to talk to the radio. And when you buy a radio, make sure that you get the programming cable between the computer and the radio. The software that is inside the radio is called a code plug. The code plug isn't something that you have to start figuring out from nowhere. Most of the common radios, like the Tytera, the TYT, the Motorola's, etc., have on websites code plugs already made up. You can download the code plug, and I'll show you that in a second, and update it. Remember, color codes, that's not an option. You need that to open the repeater. All the DMR radios are full analog radios, as well as a digital radio. So does this organization have a repeater? Okay. As you know, Twin Cities have a lot of both VHF and UHF repeaters. Most of the DMR radios today are UHF in this part of the country, or you can buy VHF. My background, I said, I'm not building, I'm not designing. I was in China late last year and visited 4 DMR radio manufacturers because I wanted to find out, based on having heard here, that many of the groups that I've talked to, they typically have a VHF analog repeater, but they want to get into DMR, which around here is UHF, so that means they got to have 2 radios. I pushed the manufacturers to actually come out with, and there's actually today 3 different that are coming out this summer with VHF, UHF, DMR, and analog radios. So if you're thinking about buying your first DMR radio, yeah, you can buy the UHF one or the VHF, or wait till the summer and get the combined, because now you have the analog part on VHF, or if you go to the East Coast, VHF, DMR. So just a little hint. For DMRs, you can also do simplex. There are 4 frequencies allocated for simplex. Typically talk group 99, color code 1, and time slot 1. So again, when I use this on simplex, you can hear how nice it works.
Good question.
Question? Yes.
The software, we have Fusion, G-Star, DMR. The DMR software, is that open source? Anybody can use it, or
Yes.
proprietary? Like
No, it's the DMR programming software you get from each manufacturer.
Okay.
The code plugs are something that are done locally. I have some on it. I have some radios that nobody else has here in the US, so I had to create my code plug for this myself, which is not difficult at all. The programming software gives you all the columns and things that has to be filled in. All I have to do is add what frequency, what color code, what talk group, etc., and then load it into the radio, and I'm off running.
What does YASIN and ICON think about this?
When you go to Motorola and some of the big names, when it comes to DMR, the vocoder and such is not proprietary. The software, I can't tell you if you get that free, but I think you do, because the whole DMR community works on free software once you buy the radio. The first thing you have to do, this is typical programming software, how that looks, and you have a bunch of things you can open on the side here. The first thing you open is where you put your 312, your ID for the radio. You can also put your KD0, P and Q and customize it a little bit. If you download a code plug from the internet, which again shows on this form where they are, this area and that area you have to change, otherwise you'll be using either mine or somebody else digital reference for the radio. And there are websites that goes through this information page by page, capability by capability in detail. If it's the first time you're doing it, you can look on the internet and see exactly what each thing does. For, as an example, Oakdale, the way the radio is structured is it has, or it should have, 1,000 channels. Some of the older radios, which aren't really available anymore, came out with 32 channels. That's good for a business like Target that's only using between their business to business. If you're an amateur, and we have 12 repeaters around the Twin Cities, each repeater is structured with 16 channels. Typically, and I know you can't read that, but typically worldwide, North America, Minnesota, etc. And each of the channels are the same between each repeaters. That's how the code plugs come to you. So that when you go from one repeater to the other, channel 5 is always the same for all the repeaters. You, on the other hand, can change all of that. Because I know the 1,000 channels, if you are here in the summer and in Arizona in the winter, and you don't want to reprogram this each time, you can change and do whatever you want to do. So it doesn't have to be tactical 311 on channel 10. It doesn't have to be. That means that when you switch channels, you have to know what you're actually on. The other emergency managements have some event 1 emergency communication channels at the bottom, but otherwise the same on the top. Again, if you here decide to have Minnesota like on the previous, still works. Code plug programming. Again, here I've opened up all the channels. Here all the repeaters, and this is how each channel looks like on the programming, where you actually add frequency, And you can reprogram the amplification of your voice so that if you're a very soft-speaking person or you like to hold it away, you can decide how much amplification you want in the system. And that's why the parrot channel is there, which I couldn't show you here, where you can then hold it the way you like to hold it, talk into it, and listen back. How did I sound? Between the CSI type radios, the Type-Tera, or the Anytone radios, there is a piece of software called Contact Manager. If you take a code plug for the CSI radio, you find that that's a good one for you, and you want to load that into, here's an Anytone radio, or into my computer, and open up the software in the computer. This becomes a DMR repeater that connects to the world. So in Sweden, between my radio and this antenna, and let's say about a mile's distance maximum, I could talk to people here in Minnesota, etc. So if you have a summer place hidden in the mountains in Arizona, no repeater around, there are multiple capabilities like this once you have internet. The cost?
Question on the
Yep.
device. I've heard, just several times, word of mouth, that a lot of people have had a lot of trouble with these little mini dongle devices. Does that change?
You are right, because they are fairly sensitive to set up,
Okay.
and specifically set up on the sensitivity and microphone, this and that. These small devices are actually made for DMR, P25, 456 systems. I think it shows right here. D-Star, DMR, P25. What is sensitive is on a different page. So yes, there is another little square blue box about this big that I hear from people. It's double the price, but it's much more reliable. I can't remember what it's called.
What is the cost of the unit you have there?
This was $140.
And you had good luck with it?
Yes. Took me a little tinkering to make it work correctly. Down at the bottom here, it kind of shows what's happening. So yes. Nets. Saturdays, I said that incorrectly. Saturdays at Minnesota time, 11 a.m., we have a worldwide talk group net. There is a breakfast every second Saturday at Fats Nets Eggs in St. Anthony Village. I've attended a few of those. There is a guy that runs the second website, Eric something, who is a fabulous DMR guy. The Type-Tera radio, there's somebody here in the U.S. that has busted into the firmware of this radio.
Of course.
And it's free on the internet, this American modified firmware. So what actually happens on this radio when I broadcast, not only does it shows my digital ID, but it shows my name, it shows where I'm from in Plymouth. It does a lot more than what the original firmware did. And Eric typically shows up at those breakfasts, has his computer with him.
The West Garden, West?
No. Has his computer with him, and can update the firmware on people's Hytera or TYT radios. Again, now you're into the fun of the hobby, tinkering. And the other thing is, there's a Minnesota DMR every Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the evening. Time for commercials. John and I are volunteering for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. We're having a lot of fun tinkering with radios, helping, doing things. And if any of you want to become a volunteer, take that three-folded Hennepin County Sheriff folder. This RV is a command and control bus with amateur radio, police radio, Coast Guard radio, aircraft radios. Everything can be tied together and work together. The 911 call center has one of the fanciest radio rigs that you could ever dream of. Some people from their home remote run that. So again, it's a great place to continue your hobby and be able to share ideas. Take my reference page, which shows all the web pages that I've talked about. And it's my expectation that the VHF, UHF radios, there's 2 or 3 coming out this summer, will be available at Radio City once they are available. Any questions? Any additional questions? Yes?
You know, any estimate of the cost on the little VHF?
It turns out that, yes, I do. This radio, this company, was out of the 4 I visited, the best. We all hear about Chinese junk. One of the 4 I was not impressed with. The way the ESD control, the way the people were handled, etc. This outfit, called Anytone, actually makes radios for some of the big U.S. brands. So they are managed the way they do it by very high standards. Their local brand is Anytone. I happen to have one here. This is a DMR radio for just UHF. The dual one's going to cost less than $200. And that's VHF, UHF, 2,000 channels, 10 watts, not just 5.
Wow.
2,000 channels, which will allow you to, again, have many more capabilities. And it may sound like 2,000 or 1,000 is a lot, but think of each of the 12 repeaters using 16 channels. You eat them up very quickly. So I think I answered your question. Yes?
Could you talk a little bit, say I've got a DMR roll rig in my car and I'm driving from St. Cloud to Rochester. Obviously I'm moving in and out of different repeater coverages along the way. What's the mechanics of, do I have different channels I push to in my radio? What's the behavior as I fade out of one coverage and so on?
Excellent question. That goes for the handheld too. It's my understanding that some upper scale Motorola radios automatically can scan and switch from one repeater to the other. Most of the other radios, I would say most, all of the other, Anytone, Hytera, TYT, etc., you have to select the zone, or in other words, the repeater that you want to communicate with. I am impressed how the coverage of the digital repeaters around the city is. Because Medina is, the antenna is located in the, I wouldn't say government, mast, which is, you know, John, how high up that is?
300 feet,
300 feet up?
that's what the antenna is.
Right. So it is fantastic coverage. Some of the other repeaters have the same great coverage. So you don't have to switch every so often. If you're in, let's say, the west part of the city, Medina. I was over in St. Paul and Stillwater, and one of the St. Paul repeaters did great for that. Yes, if you don't invest in a Motorola, then you have to switch from one to the other.
If you have each of these repeaters programmed in with the same talk group, then once you switch, you're basically right back.
You're right back.
Yeah. So, and then as far as the typical digital kind of failure mode, you get kind of the sound like you're in a barrel because you're getting bits dropped and then finally just go away, or
You do now and then.
it's pretty quick transition. I would suspect
Yep.
you're either all the way there or you're not
Yep.
there at all. Yeah, you get a little bit of indication that it's time to do something, and then you.
Let's go around the table. Any other questions? John?
The weather bureau gonna, take Skyward over to that? That's my question.
Just say that again, Just.
It has to do with Skyward, is the weather bureau gonna post the weather service that, as opposed to? No, ham radio, right? It is ham radio.
Yeah.
Right.
The
So,
spotters.
I mean, is the National Weather Service using or going to use DMR?
Not from what I know at this time. Again, the repeater owners that are signed up with the local connection, if we do have an emergency that needs better control, they have the chance and they may take over one of the talk groups or something. That's what I've heard in some of those meetings, because they need good communication. Yes?
You know, with all of this layering of each other, the way I think about it, the RF frequency and talk group that's going down, I'm not even sure how best to phrase this question, but for instance, the repeater I use is in St. Paul, and I've got a list of what talk groups they support on that repeater. Let's say there's a talk group that's connected to a repeater in New York that I'd really like to listen to and talk on.
All the repeaters support all of them. You have to open it up on the talk group that is unique that you want to. I've programmed in Swedish talk groups on it.
But if my local repeater doesn't have are you saying that just because of this list of talk groups that repeater publishes,
Yes.
that isn't the limit, that it can actually use any talk group? Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I, on one of my radios, have all the Swedish talk groups, which is divided into 7 parts of the country. And yes,
So why would, like, the St. Paul owner publish a list of, it's like 40 talk groups?
because it's the recommended talk group.
Are they prioritized over other ones if
Some
someone's trying
are
to compete?
prioritized, as I
Okay.
mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. They are on all the time.
But beyond the on all the time versus
Beyond
quick
that,
talk, they're
you
whoever's
have
first.
to open them up
Okay.
yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I'm still a little confused. Let's say you're connected to the Medina repeater, and you selected a talk group in Sweden.
Yep.
Now, I'm connected to the Medina repeater as well with my radio. I'm not going to hear you talking to the talk group in Sweden because I don't have that talk group
Correct.
program.
And
But-
you are also not going to be able to get online,
Correct, okay,
because I am tying up that talk group, that channel
got it,
of the repeater.
got
Of that repeater.
it, understood.
All the time is all the time what happens, or just while the transmissions are actually happening?
Just while the transmission is
Okay, so
happening.
there could be 2 conversations that kind of like, wait, I can't talk suddenly in the middle if you're kind of breaks.
Right.
Okay.
But the repeaters could be going to multiple places at the same time or not? repeaters just
Two
talking to one
places,
talk group.
two places, the two,
Oh, the two
on one
channels.
frequency,
Okay,
two
okay.
channels.
I see. Okay, so it is just the two.
Yep,
You have to share them. Okay.
yep.
Can you transmit data?
You can do an SMS message. You can, which I haven't figured out yet, but I know people that can do a selective call. So if you happen to have just taking a digital number, 312-00000, there is a way where I can, on my radio, call just your radio.
Okay.
Can I send you a JPEG?
Don't know. I haven't tried it.
What's going to receive it?
Both radios would have to, you tie up the channels, they probably don't want to encourage
Yeah.
it even if it's possible.
The SMS messaging is not encouraged,
Yeah.
but the radios, most of the radios do allow that.
Well, that should go pretty quick though, so I wouldn't imagine it tie up too much.
Right. That's why it's quick. It's very quick. Go over.
Well, it's really for voice, so it's, right?
Yeah.
So unlike digital modes
Yep,
that are really intended for typing,
yep.
you know, it's really something that's taking digital voice in a little bit different direction. I like what I heard. I mean, it sounds, I'm guessing that the reason it has grown so fast is because it seems more usable or user-friendly than
For
D-Star
$100,
and
you
less
can
money.
talk to the world.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the amateurs that live in an apartment, can't
Yeah.
put an antenna rig up,
Yeah.
can't invest the $500,000 to play with the world, you can hear
Yeah.
with these radios, play with the world and selectively play with England or North America or worldwide English language, etc., etc.
In a way, it's a lot more open than, I mean, for a while, people thought the internet was going to, of course, kill amateur radio, but it's much more open in some ways, because, or much more accessible. If you have a special interest group in Sweden on the internet, you would have to search and find out when, you know, the chat rooms are open and all of that, whereas with this, it's pretty much whenever.
Right.
It was a wide coverage area like Medina, for example. You can only have 2 channels active at a time. You seem like you might be waiting quite a bit.
Yeah.
Do you hear the other channels going on, or
You don't.
you don't?
And the website,
I didn't understand
And a
that.
regular repeater only has one.
Right, I know, but
Double down on that. That's
Well, I'm saying with the
worldwide
big area.
application, yeah.
and
this
so to see how busy they are, or how much you have to wait.
this type of website can shows you
Okay.
this area here. I have seen 10 people at the
Oh.
same time, which means they're obviously using different repeaters, connecting things up together, so they're not colliding. And
They're not all using Medinas then, they're using other
No,
repeaters.
they're not.
I gotcha.
And if you look at this, here's Minnesota, Florida, Tri-State, Philadelphia, Florida, etc. So, but typically here, no, let me see, Florida, UC, I don't see a, but here's where you can see England, etc., different countries of the world. So that it's easy then for you, when you know that you can get on, to call that individual.
And much like a LAN, you got time division multiplexing that's helping you. Right, because you have 2 channels,
Just the 2 though.
but just from just the normal use, tying it up, but then release, and then somebody ties it up,
Yep.
that's certainly not hurting any.
Because with voice, there's a lot of quiet time.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Question here?
You talked about before that you have to feed it and push the cost to get, for instance, if you're going on worldwide, to get the repeater.
Opened up on worldwide.
Is that, what if somebody else opens up the repeater? Is that?
If somebody else opens up North America, and then it sits and transmits whatever happens here. Oh, yeah.
Did you have to do anything, or just?
No, you will hear what the other person did, and then if you take over and do your key up to worldwide, then it switches to worldwide.
More of that, the same pattern as
Yeah.
computer.
Yep. Question down at the end?
Yeah, you mentioned that someone had hacked the firmware to display names. You know, did they reverse engineer that, or?
How it was done, I don't know, but there's a bunch of write-ups on websites about this radio, and for you that didn't see it down here.
Because I was thinking as far as the question about like doing handoffs, automatic handoffs, that might be something that could be hacked into the firmware, right? Repeater handoff. Like you're saying, the Motorola phone
Right.
has that capability to automatically hand off.
It has, because the repeaters, to 99% Motorola repeaters, that people are investing in. And especially, you can see how it looks there when I let go. The emergency management network requires Motorola repeaters because when they use it professionally, they will have Motorola DMR radios, and they typically are at the $400 or $500 price range. And they then have the capability between the repeater and the radio to select the best, nearest repeater. So if you want to invest, if you want to play with it that way, yes, it costs more money.
And they're on commercial frequencies then?
Nope.
No, they're on the amateur as well?
Amateur band, exactly the same.
Cool. Wow.
Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned, the two time slots being occupied, and then you, on some talk groups that you're not supposed to listen to, or go on and play, and then you try to you get a message assuming that all time slots are busy or something to that effect, and just out of curiosity, how often, as with the current level of activity, does that happen once a week?
When I'm on, I typically, when I sit at home, have one of my radios on to see what's going on. I also do have a mobile radio, a 50-watt radio, which with a roof antenna, I can reach all 12 repeaters in town. I'm just showing how it shows up on the...
So with the amount of activity today, it's
No
not
problem.
unusual for you to get a busy
No problem.
response. Okay.
And if I do, if I'm not able to get across, I don't know if you can see here, but this is how it now looks when I am getting across.
Okay.
So really, your objective is to find
Zero seems contested.
a clear channel, so to speak.
Right,
And then just you connect to that top.
yep. Great questions, by the way. Yes.
All right. I think, Craig, I think this is something what you were getting at too. Isn't it true that, okay, you got two channels, one is generally local, the other one worldwide. All right, suppose the local channel was really, really tied up. So we can, let's forget about that side for a minute. It's busy with two guys that are going back and forth. All right. Suppose on the worldwide time slot 2, or whatever, you were trying to find somebody in Sweden. And you're going back and forth, kind of slow. How you doing? I'm okay. Now, if you were in Germany, and I wanted to connect to a repeater in Germany on the worldwide side, we could do that at the same time, correct? In other words, by Craig and I using the empty seconds of time between your responses to each other in Sweden, correct?
Let me, not fully. Minnesota has expanded so that the MN State, Minnesota State channel, is on talk group 2. We have added MN DMR, which is on talk group 1, just so that we can have more local traffic on both channels. That's one of the areas. Once any of the channels are occupied by me or by somebody else using that channel out of the 2 on the repeater, you really can't use it for anything else. And if I am using a worldwide talk group 1, that means I'm tying up a lot of repeaters.
All right, but if I would try and, I know that you and somebody in Sweden had some conversation going on kind of slowly, with gaps in between. If I should key up trying to hit Germany,
You can do that.
I can intermingle, I can intermix
Yes.
and get in between 2 of them.
Yeah.
And lock you out, maybe even.
I may not even know that. But let me explain too, that when you use the digital radio, 1, 2, 3, you can hear the delay. And typically, what we do customarily, which is different than analog, I don't, as soon as I hear that he's done, I don't key up right away. I typically wait 2 seconds, just to make sure that I'm not tying up something or somebody else wants to come in. So normally, there's always the capability for somebody else to come in and say something on their time or on the same channel, but on a different time slot.
Great. But what if I were to get into the middle of your conversation?
You can't, because your radio won't be transmitting.
No, you let up. Suppose you had let go, you had made a statement to Sweden and unseen. That is dead air. So I quit calling to Germany. Okay, so if I'm talking to Craig, and now your friend in Sweden, and his repeater is unused, he comes back on, but he can't get through to you because I'm tying up the receiver here, or the repeater here.
That has happened to me, that when I want to respond, I see that I can't get through. So then I wait another second, I try again, now I get through.
Okay, that's
I have
fine.
seen that.
But what if your far end is trying to reach you?
Same thing.
Oh, he won't connect to it either.
Right.
And he will realize it and
Right.
not talk.
Because if I see which one it was.
If your German conversation was perfectly synchronized with his Sweden conversation.
But you'd have to get in between though. You're
you have
locking
to
each
get
other
in
out.
between each other.
Right, but you're locking them out though.
Well, as long as, like I said, you were perfectly synchronized, so when these 2 guys were silent, you
Right,
talked,
right.
and then when you were silent, they
That's
talked.
right, but
it
it's
would
over,
work fine.
but you'd lock each other out when
Yeah.
you're on.
Right.
Okay.
Right now on this radio, I'm on St. Paul, worldwide.
There's nothing there.
I can't transmit.
Oh, you can't get in.
No, because it won't reach to St. Paul. So that's the same thing. If the local one was busy, it would do that to me.
Yeah.
If it's busy, if you can reach the repeater but it's busy, does it tell you who's using the time slot? So you can kind
Yeah,
of,
you will
you could
see.
then switch over and ask if you could use it or something?
You will
Okay.
see who's on, just like on that radio when I hit here, if you look at that. 1, 2. You see on there who is on. 1, 2.
You still have to play nice, then, is what the thing is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely, it's not unlimited band space like an internet type where everybody's going at the same
Not
time.
so much
Yours-
that.
Or like a trunk system where you have
He did say
10
it's
channels
not for
or
rag junk.
Oh, yes, well,
You
yeah.
talked about somebody improperly using their digital ID. Is that, you have to do your own policing on that, or is there some organizational policing?
And what happens is, people are buying a radio, they download a code plug, and they don't realize all the details yet. So once you realize that, uh-oh, that doesn't look right, you can just tell them, go to website, dmr-mark.org, get your own number. And you get that within 1 day, within 24 hours.
So if I wanted to set up an IED using DMR, I could use your ID card, ID number.
You could.
Devious guy.
You could. You could get me in trouble too.
Well, that sounds like a real weakness in our
Well, again, we're all amateurs. I can be using your call sign and screwing you up.
but the call sign is not going to trigger an IED.
No.
Black band.
Bad bomber.
Good question. It's real.